have to press a button. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to session 2. We are going to have presentations and discussions on vocational education and training for green growth. We already had an expert workshop on this issue on Tuesday this week here in Seoul. It was organized by UNESCO and GHR. And there was a common understanding that we can't go on with our natural resources as we did in the past. Natural resources, especially energy and some raw materials, are rare and, of course, endless. We are faced to change the way we do our business by increasing prices, by changing customer demands, and a changed legislation, of course. So, greening the economy is not an idea of some green activists, but it's necessary for economical reasons. For the green economy is a fast-growing sector in economy, and innovations seem to be unthinkable in the future without referring to the principles of sustainability. We will have 3 presentations this morning, and I introduce you to Andy Wilson. He is principal at Westminster Kingsway College. We will start with his presentation. Second, may I introduce you to Deborah Roosevelt. She's head of the Education and Training Policy Division of the Oacd. And finally, he is just coming, John Sik-Wo. He is a senior fellow of Korea's Development Institute. In addition, we have 2 discussions with contributions afterwards. May I introduce you to Mr. Ki-Yak Ryu, a research fellow from GHR, and Kyung-Sik Choi, professor of economics from the Yonsei University. So, Andy, it's your turn. Please start with your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 감사합니다. I'm principal of Westminster Kingsway College, which is a large further education college in London, England. I thought it might be worth starting by saying something about the English further education system. It's slightly different from that in many countries. UKFE has about 3 million students enrolled in it in any year. We're a provider of tertiary and adult vocational education, mainly. But that really does cover a multitude of sins. We can start with something which would be fairly low-level English teaching people who are both residents in the UK or recent immigrants into the UK, English. But then we would go through a variety of courses all the way through to higher education, so to what would be traditionally thought of as university courses, AG courses. And all of those things, where it's vocational education, are taught within the further education sector. One of the key things that's expected of British colleges, English colleges, is that we're highly responsive, both to the needs of the economy and to the needs of the local communities who we serve. And so there's a real expectation that we respond quickly and flexibly to the needs of those groups. Westminster Kingsway College is the main provider of further education in central London. We have we cover a wide variety of vocational areas, but we have specialisms in hospitality, in creative industries, and in teaching teachers, training teachers, and people who assess other qualifications. In this presentation, what I want to try and do is to consider the skills, needs and demands that emerge from the UK economy in terms of meeting the green agenda, and to think a bit about what are the specific skills, the specific vocational skills that are required in order to do that, and the more generic skills that are expected of young people in particular, but also those people who are retraining to work within the green economy. I want to look at the tools that are available to UK colleges in order to do that, and then to provide a number of examples of developments that have taken place in colleges across the UK system in order to respond to those demands. Hopefully this is working now. Not quite. There we go. I can use it. That's fine. Thanks. Key issues for the UK. Like most Western countries, the government in the UK has committed to quite significant reductions in carbon emissions. So an 80% reduction in carbon emissions by 2050. However, in spite of that, well, maybe because of that, 73% of employers are not confident that they are actually able to recruit people with the skills that are required. So there appears to be a real mismatch between government demands and how employers and businesses in the UK will meet those demands. In London alone, there are supposed to be 18,000 new jobs in low-carbon industries required by 2013, so over the next 2 or 3 years. Now, the British government, you may well know that there was a general election in Britain and a change of government early this year in May. And the previous government had a very strong policy around what was called skills activism. So really directing the educational institutions to meet the demands of new industries in the UK. The new government are much less prescriptive and demanding in what they're saying, and they're really leaving it open to colleges and the market to say how we will respond to those requirements. We're being deregulated. We're being told to deregulate so that we save money. But what that means is that the government have got fewer levers available to them to actually make sure that we do what industry and some of the other targets are demanding of us. And one of the things that we're experiencing is we're being told by industry and by the government that there's a real need for developing these key skills, but the demand from students and people to train doesn't come through. And one of the key issues for us as colleges is to make sure that we develop that demand amongst young people to train to fulfil the needs of the economy and the needs of business. One of a very recent document that's been produced, and I think one of the most useful documents that has been produced in the UK around this area, has been produced by the London Development Agency, the LDA. So it's specifically looking at what the needs in London are and the response that's required there. And it's certainly true that according to that document, that high-level skills are needed in what we call STEM subjects. So in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. However, that document says that there's a much more fundamental need in London for some generic skills. That actually the green agenda is driven by a particular approach to leadership and management, to innovation, to communication and to business. They say that many of the low-carbon jobs don't actually require huge changes, wholesale or radical changes in skills or qualifications. Instead, They just require a small level of modification to become low-level skills. And so a lot of what we're talking about is retraining people who are already reasonably skilled in the areas that they're working. And so whilst we tend to characterise the green sector as requiring higher level skills, actually there are substantial opportunities to create jobs that require lower level skills too. And that's particularly important as the UK economy comes out of recession. There are large numbers of people who are unemployed, and they will be looking to re-enter the workforce in new jobs. There are real opportunities there within green-orientated, sustainability-oriented jobs. And that can be seen a bit more in these graphs. I hope you can read them. But the green areas on those graphs are sectors where high-level skills are required. So we call those level 4 skills and above. They're higher education, university-level skills. But you can actually see that in quite a number of the sectors, you don't actually require huge numbers of high-level skills. And what we need is to retrain people into some fairly low-level skill occupations. And if we look here, in these two here, where there's high levels of low-level skills required in order to fulfill the needs there, those are around recovering, recycling and waste management. Very important to city economies. And so if we take an area like London, a city economy, actually the opportunities for people to train around low-level skills are very important. And if we look at those jobs that take us through the next few years, that becomes even more the case. There are large numbers of jobs at the higher level, at level 4, the university level, but actually around 40% of the jobs that will be required are what we term level 3 and below. So they're less skilled areas of the economy. And what the LDA report says is actually we're doing quite a good job of training people in higher education. And the real challenge is to retrain new people in the lower level skills that will underpin those jobs. In terms of the tools that are available to a further education college in the UK, there's 3 elements to it. The first thing is that the British vocational education system is highly qualification reliant. Anything that we teach is validated by an external awarding body. And this is, I know this is something when we talk to people in Korea, that they find it quite difficult to understand from the first place, that you're used to writing your own courses, your own curriculum. Actually, we have to start with qualifications that are laid down by awarding bodies and develop a curriculum around that. So the next stage is that we interpret what the awarding bodies provide us and turn that into a curriculum, what we actually teach. And clearly that provides some flexibility to colleges to interpret what the qualifications do. But also, crucially, around that, we put in various support for our students, tutorials, enrichment activities, and other experiences for them. And there's real space there to make sure that the sustainability agenda comes from combining those 3 elements within our students' experience. And just to run through quickly some examples of how that's done, to take those 3 levels, the qualification, the curriculum and the support. There's a few examples here from colleges within the United Kingdom. The first is Birmingham Metropolitan College. Birmingham is Britain's second city, the second largest city there. And there's a partnership that's been developed between Birmingham Metropolitan College and the government, the local government, the regional government there, and central government to develop a programme which specialises in green technologies, in the business skills and in the high-tech engineering that are necessary there. So really what that college is doing is concentrating on those high-level skills and developing qualifications and the curriculum in order to meet those needs. Barnsley College, which is in the north of England, a city in the north of England, but with a large rural area around it, has actually built a specialist facility, a centre of excellence to deliver training for the existing workforce and the new workforce. So they've built a building which is highly sustainable, that has all of the technology built into it, and so that they can really look at the cutting edge of those environmental technologies. I don't know what a lot of these things mean, but things like renewable awareness, smart meters, warm water and heat pumps, all crucial high-end parts of what's needed in order to develop the green agenda across the sort of high-tech part of industry. Walsall College, also near Birmingham, has looked at retrofit. So that's taking existing buildings and refitting them around environmentally sustainable technologies. And they've collaborated with a housing association. A housing association in the UK builds and rents social housing. So they're working with organisations that are doing that in order to build the skills that are needed to retrofit, to fit out existing buildings and make them more environmentally sustainable. My own college, Westminster Kingsway College, does a lot of training in hospitality, in hotels, restaurants, hospitality. And as you're probably aware, the 2012 Olympic Games are going to take place in London. And those games are really being used as a focus for sustainability. And we're building on that theme within our hospitality and tourism work. So we're particularly looking at ways that food's sourced and the supply chains behind that. And a number of our higher education students are doing dissertations around related areas there. And we're working very much with suppliers, the people who supply us with food and services, in order to think how more sustainability can be built into the work that they do. There's then a couple of examples that's really about the adding around the edges of the main qualification. South East Essex College, and I think we have some colleagues in the room from Leicester College, which I'm going to mention in a minute, and I think they use this qualification as well. Ascentis is an awarding body, one of these external organisations that award qualifications. And they've built a qualification that can be added on to main courses to introduce students who wouldn't otherwise come across the sustainability agenda to more of the issues around it. And the students will achieve an extra qualification in sustainability and green issues. And Ofsted, who are our inspectors, have, as part of the inspection regime that we're assessed against, have started to build in ideas where all colleges are going to be assessed against that green agenda, and the Ascentis qualification is one way of providing that. Leicester College brings this very much out in its tutorial themes. So that's where working with individual students in support of their main courses, and they'll look at environmental issues as part of that programme. So basic concepts in sustainability, the way resources are used, and to look at how the evaluation of the work that they do, how it can be evaluated against the green agenda. Finally, going back to my own college, and to many colleges within the British FE system, there's a real concentration on thinking about the needs of the individual learner and how the individual learner can take more responsibility for their programme. So they're more flexible and more autonomous in the way that they work in the future. The idea of that is it means that they're better able to respond to the changes in society, the changes in technology, and the changes in the environment. And we do a lot of work with our individual students and them working in groups together to really think about how they develop as learners and develop their own skills of managing their learning programme. That means that we've also got to train teachers to work in that way, and the specialism that we have in working with teachers and assessors, which we're also doing some work with colleagues in Korea on, is very much about bringing out the way that they support individual learners as well as teaching big programmes. And we think that through that process we're really setting up to prepare young people for a sustainable and global future. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, for this interesting report about models, best practice models of the United Kingdom. I think we can learn from them that it is necessary to have networks, bridges between those who are organizing the training and those who can give information about the demand, about what is necessary in vocational life. And I think this is a good contribution. I would have some question, of course, but I will wait until the discussion later on. So we'll have the second contribution from Deborah.
You can use this pointer. Just going forward for this key, and backward, just in case it doesn't work.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity to bring to you today some OECD perspectives on vocational education and training for skills and green growth. For those of you who are not familiar with the OECD, we are an international organisation and we have 33 member countries, and so our work is based on drawing out the lessons that can be learned from comparing country experience. So, here we go. For us, it's a key point that economic growth needs to be sustainable and aimed at developing a stronger, cleaner and fairer society for all. Across all our countries, green growth is gaining support as a key way to pursue economic growth and development. And cleaner sources of growth include new industries, new green industries, jobs and technologies, and managing the structural changes associated with moving to a greener economy. We find across all sectors of the economy the demand for skills is constantly changing, and we see new jobs with new skills, we see existing jobs requiring skills upgrading, and we see shifting demand for existing skills. In our OECD experience, we find that countries share common goals and objectives on developing skills for today's jobs and for future jobs, better matching people and their skills to the jobs, and building the skills base for a sustainable future. But we also find that in many countries, vocational education and training has been neglected and often overshadowed by increasing emphasis on general academic education and universities. However, policymakers increasingly now realise that VET can play a key role in equipping societies with the skills needed for sustainable growth and competitiveness, and we've just heard some very concrete examples of that, preparing individuals for future economic success, and underpinning innovation. Let me just show you two examples from leaders of the United States and Japan. One key feature we find is that countries start differentiating between vocational education and training and general education at different ages and stages. And we also find that the target age and range of VET programs in each country does tend to shift over time. So if you see in this graph, you can see how much variation there is across countries at the upper secondary school level. So we have just released a report, Learning for Jobs, which looked at how upper secondary vocational education and training and apprenticeships can better respond to labour market needs in a range of OECD countries. And as well as the specific recommendations for individual countries, it also identified several general policy priorities to provide the right mix of skills for the labour market, to reform career guidance so that it provides effective advice for all, to ensure teachers and trainers are well prepared with industry experience, to make full use of workplace learning, and to develop the tools to engage stakeholders and promote transparency. But we also face new policy challenges and questions. And we're now looking at how to improve the performance of post-secondary VET systems to develop the skills needed for green, sustainable economic growth. And as we can see, employers, governments, and students from different perspectives all want to see improvements. And when we talk with countries, we find there are some very common concerns across countries about meeting demand for skills, the mix of academic and vocational education, where does VET best fit within tertiary sector, public and private financing mechanisms, qualifications, quality assurance, assessment, and workplace learning. I should perhaps just clarify what we are actually looking at. And across the OECD, there are both post-secondary vocational programs and post-secondary vocational institutions. And here you can see some examples of each. So the OECD is now launching a new policy review on improving performance of post-secondary VET to better respond to labour market needs, and we're calling this project Skills Beyond School. It builds on our OECD knowledge base, including tertiary education for the Knowledge Society and our Learning for Jobs report. And we're carrying out preparatory work for this project jointly with CREVET, and we're very grateful to President Kwan and all his staff for their support in this work. Skills Beyond School will look at four main policy areas: how to build more effective institutional frameworks, to get a better match of supply and demand for skills, to get better quality in post-secondary vocational education training, and to improve equity, access and completion. So I'd like to quickly go through each one of these in turn. On effective institutional frameworks, we see a variety of institutional arrangements for VET programs and different governance, funding and strategic oversight arrangements across different countries. But we do see across the board a trend towards greater autonomy, and that the courses on offer are becoming more complex and dynamic. As policy challenges, we see interactions between policies in each area of the tertiary or post-secondary education sector and how they work together to influence what providers offer and what choices students make. We find that the cost drivers are often not well understood, and the pathways between and within vocational education and academic programs are often not very well connected. So we ask, how can institutional frameworks, funding and governance arrangements be well designed for better balance between post-secondary vet and academic programs, to respond to labour market needs and to provide the right sorts of incentives for innovation and efficient provision? And which tools are best for sideways and upward mobility within post-secondary education? On the second area, better matching skills and supply and demand for skills, we find, as I said, the demand for skills is complex and dynamic and becoming increasingly more so. We are starting to see more commonly projections of net job openings, and they are becoming more sophisticated. But we find that data on the labour market outcomes of different courses of study are often patchy or too highly aggregated to be sufficiently useful. So the policy challenges, we really need higher quality information. Students also need good career guidance. Post-secondary vet providers need to be responsive and more responsive, and employers need channels, importantly, to communicate their needs both to providers and to students. So this leads us to policy questions on how to strengthen data on labour market outcomes. What sorts of steering mechanisms can be used to reconcile what students want to study and what employers need? How can providers be encouraged to become more responsive? How to blend programs and workplace learning to strengthen job readiness skills? And how to get employers and trade unions actively engaged. Let me now turn to quality. The quality of vocational programs is often difficult to measure, and the sorts of quality indicators that are used in universities aren't necessarily so relevant to VET. Teachers and trainers are key to the quality, and often we find local monopolies in providers abound, particularly in smaller towns and communities. So in terms of policy challenges, quality needs to be transparent and verified. Teachers and trainers need a career structure that helps them to become most effective. Assessment techniques need to be improved, and institutions need to have incentives to improve quality. So this leads us to ask, well, what quality assurance tools are needed and best adapted to the task? How can the career structure for VET teachers and trainers be improved? And how can the funding and governance arrangements provide sufficient incentives for improving quality? Lastly, let me turn to equity, access and completion. Here we find that post-secondary VET often provides and is expected to provide opportunities for quite diverse groups of students. In some countries at least, many entrants are quite poorly prepared to undertake post-secondary studies. And somewhat linked to that, we find that dropout rates are often quite high. We also find that many vocational students have more disadvantaged backgrounds and less access to financial support than students in academic programs. And sometimes the public funding towards the vet sector has been lower than the university sector, in part sometimes just because post-secondary is the sector that's expanded most recently. So meeting multiple objectives and expectations is quite a challenge for vet providers. And they need to find the right balance between setting entry standards, but keeping access open, and providing remedial assistance and support to students, especially those coming poorly prepared and with disadvantage. And rebalancing public funding across the tertiary sector so that it funds programs in proportion to their benefits to society. Excuse me. So the policy questions this leads to: how to ensure flexible pathways of entry and maximise successful completion. How can common principles be developed to underpin the funding of post-secondary education and distribute resources in ways that promote both equity and efficiency? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deborah, for this contribution and putting this issue, sustainability, to a wider range on the basis of the reforming of the vocational education and training system and the positioning within the educational system and the relationship to the labor market. So we are interested now to hear something about the Korean experiences. I give Mr. Vo the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And I'm very glad to see you everybody here. I'm very much privileged and feel honored to share my idea about this theme with all these honorable speakers and discussants, and many of my good the friends, and old and new. Okay. And especially thanks for this organizer of this excellent event. And my special thanks for this is President Kwon of CREVET for allowing me of this chance to be able to with you. And especially happy to say just following just Deborah. Deborah just gave a very broad and balanced view, overview, and diagnosis of where this issue stands now. This from the OECD's perspective, this post-secondary VET in this green growth issue. Actually, my presentation today is kind of complementary view of Deborah's general view of the international this landscape. From this Korean perspective. And I said in my presentation I didn't have enough details on the so-called green growth strategy, but I'll try to cover it during my presentation as much as possible. And 3 main points of my presentation. In naming this the title of the presentation, I said what is new and what is unique. It's kind of, I got this title with the help of Deborah actually, because post-secondary the VET, or VET, more broadly speaking, in Korea is not a new topic. We have discussed, and worked on these issues for long, very intensely, okay, and probably picking up this intensity toward the coming years. And then what are the problems? Okay? If there is some problem, old problem, but it has not been resolved yet, then what are the obstacles? What are the problems? And also, if you have some problems, kind of universal, found everywhere else, not only in Korea, but in Japan, in many countries in OECD, then we can easily solve the problems by benchmark. Okay? So we can help greatly by benchmarking foreign experiences. The most difficult area is something quite unique, something we cannot benchmark, something we cannot copy. So it is very important to distinguish old issue and new issue. Okay? If old issue, then we have to investigate and analyze why the problem remains unresolved. If this is something new, we need new, kind of new tackling and new handling of this issue because this is new. And unique, just as I said, if this is universal, something very general issue, then we can resolve this issue mainly through thorough stock taking and benchmarking of these foreign cases. If this is quite unique in Korea, then it's much to that extent we'll need that unique approach. So that is the motivation of this study, actually this presentation. And in this sense, I'll raise 3 points. In Korea, this is issue maybe quite new because we are in a kind of very tougher situation than before, and the challenges are taller than before. Just kind of status quo, so may not work, then the cost will be higher in coming future than in the past. And this means, if this is true, this is arguable statement. It's my view. It's not the view of an official view of KDI something. But if situation is tougher and the challenges are taller, that means that the situation is not sustainable. Unless we come up with a truly innovative new approach, strategies, and the policies to resolve and cope with these challenges. And third, about this green growth part, and about the second part, I say that there still is some weight, some chance for Korea, and we can strategically leverage on the unique strength of Korea, our society. So what are those unique strengths of Korea? It might have been underdocumented, so I'll talk. And third point is the green growth. And green growth, just I guess, it has been described by Deborah, how it started. This is the new kind of global agenda, okay? And we have this terminology itself is not as new, has been with many of European countries and other advanced countries for the past 3 decades or so. And Korea took up this issue as a national agenda and also the global agenda coming to this government and worked with OECD to make it official, kind of new policy thrust of the OECD countries. So the green growth is supposed to give, kind of create this new solution to the problems that Korea has. Okay? And I guess this Korea has worked very hard to come up with some concrete measures, okay? Creating more jobs in this environment, in the industry, the energy industry, and this R&D industries, everything. But I'm saying this green growth, the concept needs to be interpreted more broadly, so in such a way to include many of so-called truly knowledge-intensive sector, the service industries. And for that, the social education and training may be a key concept we have to pay attention to in conjunction with this vocational education training. So 3 points of my presentation is Korea's situation is tougher than before. So in this sense, it's kind of new. And we have many of these truly unique dimensions of the problem from the international perspective. So to that extent, we need kind of unique and new and truly innovative policy approach. And we have the potential, Korea has the potential. And this green growth may be a very important pillar of the solution, but got to be interpreted in a kind of a broader way. And the rest of my presentation, I'll go very fast, especially about some basic, the background and the context of the Korean education and vocational education training system, because it's, I hope, it's pretty much well known. Okay? So this is a Cribel OECD project, just that Deborah touched on. And this project has been motivated by this kind of concern inside Korea and kind of interest of OECD over this kind of situation. And this good context of Korean the study, and I say there was new and unique, I said. Okay. So just as mentioned by Deborah, this Cribet OECD project was launched just about 5 months ago as a new joint initiative between two institutions. And basically, this wants to be kind of foundation work for to scope and re-examine, illuminate the issue in light of the new social and economic conditions today. And the context and the background of Korean studies, as I said, this Korea is situated in a very much tougher situation, and the challenges are tougher. And just to say it shortly, as is well known, Korea recovered very quickly from this recent global recession. But Korea is still faced with a very long-term structural problems of lowered growth with increased disparity, so-called polarization issue. Polarization amid lowering growth. Lowering growth means the aggregate demand is not expanding. The jobs are not created enough fast. Okay? So it's kind of a very kind of bad combination, lowered growth and increasing disparity. And although many people, we may disagree on this, the prospect of Korean growth in the coming future, they say that it's not, that we cannot be that optimistic. Korea is faced with a new phase of global competition from kind of mid-level player, kind of minor league player, to the major league player. So all the more, the demanding will be the high level and global competitive high level skills. And especially the skills gap in this kind of global perspective is very wide when you go down to the majority of this business in these SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, and micro businesses. Probably you may good at the small fraction of this leading large companies like Samsung and LG and Hyundai. But they're just as a minor point in terms of the employment. And we have a greater in the majority of these SMEs and micro business sector suffering from the lack of talents. And as a result, they cannot find a new market in an ever-intensifying global competitive market. And the second trend is this oversupply of something, higher education. Okay? Oversupply higher education. So everybody is getting into college. Okay? This is kind of unique situation in Korea, unique situation of Korea. Okay? So college advancement rate has increased dramatically over the past 20 or 30 years. Okay? But on the other hand, we have very meager and meek investment in lifelong learning. So just after formal school, no further investment in human capital, education, and whatever. So this international this league table shows that Korea belongs to the lower bottom in terms of this the investment made in post-secondary or post-educational lifelong learning. So we say possibly over-investment in higher education, low investment in lifelong learning. And the labor market outcome is the structural unemployment, underemployment in the labor market. And there's Korea that is many youngsters engaged in schooling. But even after the school, they cannot find a job quite for a while. So although I don't have his number, this youth unemployment rate is pretty high, and much of disguised unemployment or underemployment. And from the long-term point of view, another challenge arises from this low birth rate in the aging society, And this global total fertility rate is the following. It's kind of historically unprecedented pace. So it stands at now at just about 1, while about 40 years ago it was 4.5. And the society has become aged enough, so the aging, this indicator is rising very high. As you can see, the 2010 now is 11%, but 2030 it will be more than double. Okay? So this means that we need most of the people will need the second stage, some serious investment in education or the vocational training after finishing their first school. But the Korean schooling or this kind of the system is not there yet. It's just that schooling in all age, early age, and then work. It's not ready to make this kind of second stage, the fundamental, and the serious reinvestment. So these problems are pretty much well known. Somehow, and many domestic or international studies try to address this issue and giving the solution. And among the international studies, OECD and ADB studies was influential and significant, and the CRIBET itself has conducted numerous studies. But on balance, we said all these studies are limited in scope, focusing mostly on this formal, the high school level vocational education training, and it's taking a kind of local and domestic perspective, not global, not the macro enough perspective. But this study are very much useful in saying that what are the strengths and the challenges and the recommendation of the Korean system. And OECD studies, for instance, Learning for Jobs, said the strength is plenty of these well-educated youngsters, and tertiary sectors, we have about 1/3 engaged in this potentially, vocational education training, and the students entering this pretty well prepared for something with good academic background, as testified by the good performance in the PISA. But the challenge is this PET just under-invested and under-equipped, so to fact academic. And business engagement is very limited, and if some businesses are very short-term interested. And the recommendation, most notable recommendations, here we have more business engagement and teacher empowerment and the qualification computer standard. This is all good. So it's just kind of old wisdom and very well respectable wisdom. Now, policy-wise, policy side, Korea responded recently with Green Growth Initiative, trying to create more jobs in this climatic area or the environment area, energy area, and R&D area, all on the way. And I believe that it will take effect in time to some extent. And in terms of this as a governance issue, Korea reshuffled the Ministry of Labor, they renamed it the Ministry of Labor and Employment to say this is not only the labor issue, but it's just the employment, it's a job issue. And at this micro, the policy level, VAT and the skills, we have vocational high training reform, LLL reform, and competency standard. But still, this is the short of the whole of the government approach. And most of all, we don't know where we stand in a kind of global perspective and, from our intertemporal perspective. What we have done before, why, what kind of attainment do we have, where we stand compared to other countries. Okay? It's kind of the deficiency area for the policy making. So it's kind of deficiency in this policy infra. So we may not be ready to cope with the outstanding emerging issues. So this project, in collaborative project with World Bank, we're trying to make a new framework and some kind of new perspective, okay? And to show this stock taking, the broad scoping and issue raise, okay? And first we have to distinguish the old and the new issues, and we have to distinguish from universal or general and this Korea specific issue. This would be possible only through this thorough stock taking and kind of benchmarking. So this is proposed. And then this is all this interim position of our study. Okay? And this key research question is, as I said, old issues to new issues, and also pretty easy to say that overinvestment in something, underinvestment in something, and how valid it will be. So let's go to this final part of this tentative findings and policy suggestions. And findings, it's not findings, that we will confirm that there are substantial institutional gaps and information gaps in Korea's post-secondary VT system. Okay? To cope with all these challenging environment. So we are not good enough, and the problems may be structural and deep-rooted at this institution level, and some kind of information gap. And public awareness may not be there yet. The people are not kind of optimistic about the future without solid ground. And policy-wise, that there is a substantive room to improve on the policy scheme and the strategy. The one thing is there's a consistency beyond the political cycles. Okay? And we have the political cycle changing every 5 years. They may not be good for a good working this policy. So we need something better to mitigate this undesirable inconsistency. And the one way is just anchoring. Okay? Anchoring is to get this highest level reform mandate and public consultation, and sometimes in consultation and in cooperation with this international organization like the World Bank and OECD. And policy suggestions, so maybe you have many other suggestions already in line, but I say this: we need fundamental revamping of our higher education, and incremental change may not be enough. We need more disruptive change. And the funding system is will be very important. And it has two dimensions. One is the rechanneling of some fund from the tertiary sector to this lifelong learning sector. Okay? But that may not be easy, okay, because this is the sacrifice of some interest. So some other ways to reform of employment insurance. We have more than $1 billion unemployment insurance saved, but that is not utilized so effectively. So this is the fund we can effectively tap onto. And most importantly, we have to kind of cultivate and invigorate the private sector to kind of maximum leverage on the private sector suppliers. So this is the unique strength of the Korea. You have a bunch of good suppliers and motivated suppliers in the private sector. So with some support or due coordination by the government, then this can be transformed into a mainstay supply of this lifelong learning and post-secondary VT. And finally, this linkage between the VT and SET, what I call social education and training. In Korea, the budget share of VT is very small, but the budget share of social education and training is substantially large and is increasingly large. And Korea is very much underdeveloped in terms of social investment. Okay? Social services sector is very small, and we have the agreement that we have to develop this sector. But this is a good source and a good friend of post-secondary VT and LLL. And this is also kind of the concept we are now cultivating, exploring with the help of the World Bank. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mr. Wu, for this report upon the situation in your country and some issues for the reforming the system. You raised the question, what is new and what is unique? I mentioned the Crivet UNESCO workshop, and one answer to this question was maybe we mustn't have new structures in any case, new curricula, but maybe another kind of thinking upon sustainability, to have more critical thinking, creativity, and thinking in networks, holistic thinking, problem solving, things like that, to deal with the demands for sustainable labor market. So we have two correspondents, two remarks from Korean experts. Please start, Mr. Ryu.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation to three presenters. And I think these issues have been well addressed already, and I have not much to add on the issues here. So let me just rephrase some key issues and what are the challenges we are facing and what policy suggestion we may think of in terms of vocational education and training for green growth. So three speakers, I think, raised skill mismatch issues in field of green sector or green growth, and they also talked about how different setup of vocational education and training, like qualifications or curriculum design and support, may work to encourage or to reinforce a better system for green growth. And I also would like to drive your attention to the roles of Sector Skills Council, which is employers association that covers business of private and public partnership. So in Korea also several sector, I believe it's about 20 so sector councils we have dealing with vocational education and training and how we develop better fit of skills demand and supply in each industries. And Dr. Wu talked about preference challenges that Korean society is facing. I think it's very well received by audiences, and especially Korean people are all aware of the problem we have in terms of education system and college entrances. So that we see a high preference of general educations over vocational educations. And also, I believe this is more common and universal across the globe, although it varies in terms of magnitude. And as Deborah spoke, the Learning for Job initiative of OECD actually proposed that the solution or the key to solving this problem may lie in the post-secondary level of education as opposed to secondary or earlier stages, which I think is very important because given that the economy or the pace of development is now heading to post-industrial instead of industrial. So I will just, there's a diagram that I put on there. So the issue might be how we better set up institutional framework that resolve skill mismatches and also provide better information in supply and demands for skill in an emerging industries. So I already talked about this over-investment in higher education and under-investment in BET and LLA in Korea. So my background is sociology, so I put some social cultural explanation about this. So I think academic hierarchy and strong credentialism or high respect for humanity education also contribute to sustaining this problem, I think. And in terms of green growth and green sectors, education, many government agencies and also employers are failed to inform students of new opportunity that is emerging in the field. So students are not well informed about where their emerging jobs are located or how they prepare for labor market entry in that field. So my policy suggests threefold. First of all, I would like to see stakeholders in this BET field or LLL field build up kind of social consensus on green growth. So although many discussions are going on and many different ideas are being told, but there is no specific agreement on what green growth ought to mean and or who takes part in meeting these skill requirements in the field, in the green sector, or who, most importantly, who's going to bear the financial burden of making economy and society more greener. So this is very important issue of, in terms of reforming funding mechanism or in terms of reforming employment insurance or social welfare system as well, in general. And secondly, we need to work on improving or identifying right or over skill mixes. So this identification of skill needs and demands doesn't is very challenging task, I think. So, but most importantly, we need to take into consideration institutional settings of each country, because these might influence the process of policy making and implementation in regard to sustainable growth. So it would be a good idea to establish an integrated skill information system for employment and competence development in an emerging industries, I think. The third one is make education and labor market system help diversify career paths of students and employees as well. I think in the phase of development state phase of phase in Korea, and also industrial regime of production, there's only one monotonous pathway from school to work, like at the later, like in the high teens or in the early 20s and so on. But it would be better to make school to work and work to school transition pay or help each individual customize their own career pathway, so that help labor market systems more flexible and secure. So these three suggestions might work together in bringing up the agenda of green growth and reform of system related to skill development in this field. Thank you.
Thank you also to Mr. Ryu. I would like to agree first when you mentioned that it is necessary to have a better skill information system. Yes, we have also a lack about this in many countries, as well in Germany. But I also remember and have in mind when we ask companies to give us information about the skill development, in the future they say, we don't even know. We can't give you detailed information, only very rough information, very aggregated information. Maybe they have better information, but they won't give it because of competition reasons. They are aware of the fact that this could be an information for other companies to the strategical planning of the company, so they won't give this information. Maybe they have no real strategic planning. This could also be a reason. So it is difficult to prepare this information. We have taken one approach starting last years and the first publication this year to watch the labor market statistics in very detail and to make some kind of projection on the basis of the actual labor market statistics, the basis of different assumptions, of course. And our attempt is to continue this prediction every 2 years. So this will be a very close information about the developments on the labor market. This is a more or less personal demand. So we have the last reporter discussion. Mr. Cho, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, we just heard a fourth presentation from Dr. Yu, but I don't really prepare the presentation file. So I have 2 questions, one to Andy and one to Deborah. And I would propose a discussing point, okay? So the first thing, Andy introduced a very nice presentation for VAT for green growth in the United Kingdom, and the experiences are interesting, also very helpful. And there, in your presentation, I found one interesting thing that was a skill requirements thing, where you talk about the specific skills as well as generic skills. Specific skills are science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and blah, blah, blah. And generic skills, leadership management, innovation, communication, business skills. Well, this is quite interesting because in Korea, in most vocational institutes, mainly focuses on specific skills rather than the generic skills. So while this part was quite unique, I don't know whether it's unique. Maybe the Korean case may be unique. Anyway, so my question is, how do you estimate the skill requirements proportion? I mean, what percentage of curriculum is designed for specific skills and what percent are generic skills? As well as who designed all these curriculums? Is there any standard curriculum in the nationwide, or it is designed by each VAT institutes? And the second thing, Deborah, wow, I don't have much to add on because your presentation was very much organized and it's really comprehensive. So very well, it's really helpful. One question is, as you presented in your presentation, you showed several key policy priorities, and one thing is this ensure ensure teachers and trainers are well prepared with industry experiences. Yeah, that's right. This is very important because the demand for skills is constantly changing, and students should be changed, but before that, professors or teachers should be changed. But reality in Korea, that's the most difficult part, right? While, as you may know, labor market here is it's not flexible, especially on vocational training institutes market. I mean, professors or teachers market. So in public institutes, so we need some kind of solution to this problem. So if you have any idea on that, then please tell us. And the last one is the discussing point. My question, well, I was very much wondering why the Korean people goes to college. Everybody want to go to college, right? So in Dr. Wu's presentation, the figure, the enrollment rate, which means that the number of entrants among the high school graduates is 83.84%. It means that 8% out of 10 goes to college, a really high proportion, right? Well, then why everybody goes to college? So I did some research on that several years ago, and I estimated the returns to general education over time. And I found very interesting thing there. So the returns to, you may understand that the wage gap between college graduates and high school graduates. So how much do you receive more if you go to college, right? And until 1985, that was really high. It's almost 18%. So it means that you are being paid 18% more for the rest of your life in the labor market. That was quite high. But it began to decline since 1985. So from 1985 to 1994, for almost 10 years, the rewards to education declined. So everybody thinks that this is a signal of the overeducation. So you don't need to go to college anymore. However, in 1994, since 1994, the returns to education rises again, right? So why is that? So one possible answer is, as you may know, there was a college entrance quota in Korea. So the Ministry of Education in this country had regulated the college entrance until 1981. And then they relaxed the quota. And eventually they abolished it, right? So the returns were very high, so everybody goes to college. And then, because of the excess supply, the wage declined. But my point is, it began to increase again. And why is that? And the researches on those topics present the causes as the skill bias technology change. So it means that as technology changes, well, technology favors the college educated rather than high school educated. And this trend may be accelerated in the future. So it means that returns to education may go over and over again. Then, the problem is that signal from the labor market gives a misinformation to the young people, right? So they may think that, oh, go to college, that's the best way to earn money. But there's one thing that we should be very careful there in those estimates, because it's an average number. So it means that the average wages of college is higher than the average wages of the high school, and those wage gaps are increasing, means that the average wage gap. As Dr. Wu showed, that the unemployment rate of college nowadays are increasing. And even the wage inequality within the college graduates are also increasing. It means that only top-notch college graduates can be better off than the high school graduates, not everybody. So in some cases, somebody goes to vocational school after graduating college, right? You heard that. So we need to disseminate all these information to the education market, and to the youth, to the young people. And how to do that? How to disseminate those information effectively and fastly and blah, blah, blah. So we should think about the mechanism to the labor market information system. Okay? So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Choi, for these remarks and questions. Looking to my watch, there's no much time for answers, so I would like the speakers to focus and to give short answers, maybe starting with Andy, Deborah, and then to our Korean colleague.
Thank you. You asked a question about the proportion, the percentage of the curriculum that might be designed around the specific skills and the percentage around the generic skills. And I mean, I think it's an impossible question to actually quantify that specifically. But it does seem to me that if we look at this is not just an issue about the green agenda, it's an issue about, I think, what employers demand from new entrants into the workforce generally, and re-entrants into the workforce, about what actually makes a person job ready to take on a job. And so often employers say to me that what they want is those more generic skills, the skills of communication, the skills of customer service, the skills of being able to manage your own time, the employee being able to manage their own time and be independent and autonomous. And it's certainly not what we build sufficiently into the British vocational education system, and I suspect that's the case across a lot of other countries as well. It does seem to me that in order to raise the prestige of vocational education, what's happened is it's become very subject-specific and skill-specific, and it's been designed around high-level skills. And it takes a brave designer of a course in vocational education to build in more generic skills, more of those skills that are required to actually make a person job ready. And I think there's a challenge to be thrown down to the designers of vocational education, is to be strong enough to resist the push towards just building in those specific skills into a program, and really think what are the generic skills that are needed in order to really meet the needs of employers. So many of the specific skills are actually learnt on the job, learnt when a person's in employment. It's more difficult to develop the generic skills once somebody's employed. And actually, it comes back to the vocational academic divide, the extra prestige that's always given to academic qualifications. So often within academic courses, those generic skills are automatically built into them. They automatically exist, particularly the issues around being an autonomous, independent learner. And we don't design them enough into courses of vocational education and training.
Thank you. Very quickly, if I can just add on the question of the mix between generic and technical skills. It's not easy to find exactly the right balance, but I think here it is very important to listen to the needs of employers and make sure that there are good channels and effective channels for employers' needs in general, rather than individual specific firms, do get into the designer curriculum. I would also just like to underline one feature that we have found in upper secondary school vet and apprenticeships. A neglected point is that often the students in these programs need greater literacy and numeracy skills, and that these also need to be identified, and where there are weaknesses for individual students, that they get the support that they need in those basic skills. On the teachers and getting the teacher training, we devoted a whole chapter to this point in our report, and so it's hard to summarise. Just 2 points. One, to underline the importance of flexible paths of entry for those with industry experience to move into the vocational training role, whether in an institution or within a company, and to foster regular interchange between teaching and training and industry experience. And just on the point of the rates of return to different paths of study, I think it's very important, and increasingly we can find analyses of the distribution of rates of return according to different fields of study and according to the degree of selectivity of different institutions, and this demonstrates to us that we need to look beyond just average rates of return for going to college or going to gaining a university degree. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Wu.
I overused my time, so I don't have that much to add. Just I think final remark is I just touched on it in my presentation. Korea especially need to think more about this, not what to do, but whether that's feasible and why not, and how to make it feasible. This is the issue of political economy reform, or we call making reform happen. We have a list of what to do, strategy in the reform, revamping of higher education, and revamping of this funding system. But the more of these disruptive challenges you have, the higher will be the burden and the challenges of the making and implementation. So it's time to go beyond the issue of not just what to do, but to think more about whether it is feasible, why it's not feasible, what are the obstacles, and how to get them over. So this is the issues, I guess, is very much important and something kind of new at this stage of development and this current context of Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all of the speakers and discussants for their elaborated contributions, and I ask you for a warm thank you at the end of this session.